Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are, of course, your multi-award winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast. We're building up to North London Derby week. Yes, it is on the horizon. How many players have we got fit? We'll have to wait and see about that. Back on the show alongside me before we bring in our special guest, building up to Arsenal to come. One of his favourite fixtures of the season, Jason McGovern, is back alongside me. It's not only that, we've got the darts on, the cricket's getting going. Jace, busy week in store.
Tis, mate. Big week for the cricket, but and then a massive game next. It's Sunday, isn't it? Sunday. Yep. Sunday, the Arsenal game. So, women got a useful point off of them today, which was an unexpected one. So, the darts has been on. The golf culminated today. It's a brilliant day for sport. England's football was boring this afternoon, but let's get on with the Arsenal way.
Yep, absolutely. Firmly ready to return for Frank Ball. Also back on the show, wonderful returning guest that we try and bring on during a lot of the international breaks. And again, very, very busy always during this period. He can hear us. He might not be able to see us. That might be a good or a bad thing for him. We'll let him decide that. We've got the wonderful, of course, Sports Deputy News, of course, via the Sun Sport. The brilliant Martin Lipton is back on Last Word on Spurs. Big Tottenham fan, Martin. Lovely back alongside us here. Martin, how are you?
I'm extremely well. I was at the rugby yesterday, so I really enjoyed that. England were absolutely fantastic, actually. And I watched England today. It was less exciting, but Kane scored. Surprise, surprise, because that's what he does. And it's the good thing. It's been a weekend when we haven't watched Spurs lose. That's been a bit of a boost, hasn't it? Because there've been a few dodgy weekends recently. But it's that sort of season, I think, at the moment, isn't it? You're getting some decent results, but they've not been consistent enough. Well, actually, they've been consistent in their inconsistency because they haven't put two results together since the first couple of weeks of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we come on to that and more, definitely, Martin.
I have to say, Martin, the egg chasing is about one of the few sports I just can't get into. I can't get the idea that to go from A to B, you throw the ball backwards all the time. That's just can't work that one out. Can't work that one out.
Tell you what, you watched that game yesterday.
After the match, you don't even see the ball. They're just piling on top of it. I think
if anyone tries to tell you they know why the penalties have been awarded, I think they're lying. But nevertheless, it was a fantastic spectacle at Twickenham yesterday. I have to say the atmosphere was terrific, and the performance by England was as good as I've seen England play in a very long time. So England don't beat the New Zealand very often. That's 9 times in 120 years. So they've every right to celebrate when they play as well as they did last night.
Absolutely. One thing we do need to address for those that do watch the show, a couple of things. Yes, Martin does have a left-handed door handle. every time Martin comes on the show, what seems to always be the question is, has Martin really got a handle the other reverse way around? Yes,
I'm saying, I am going to claim that it wasn't me who put it on. The other one fell off, and we have a house of, well, you can imagine who's in the house and who's the practical person in the house, and it isn't the husband. So no, that definitely is the wrong way around, but it still works. It's one of those fixed ones. You can't actually do anything with it.
Love it. Martin, thank you again for addressing that. Paul, every time he comes on, he has to adjust the door handle. Listen, in terms of this episode of Last One on Spurs, for those that want to get interactive with the live chat, you can do. If you hit like, if you hit subscribe to the show, that will allow you to join the live chat. If you're not joined already, you just simply need to refresh your feed. Like I say, if you can like, subscribe, hype the show, that would be greatly appreciated. We are building up, of course, the Spurs back in action, of course, ahead of this week in the North London Derby against Arsenal. One thing I have to just say before we do continue is that everyone at Last One on Spurs, we extend our thoughts and best wishes to Tony Galvin, our 1984 UEFA Cup and 1981-82 FA Cup winner, who is now recovering following a stroke. We're all behind you, Tony. We wish you the very best of luck, and we hope you do make an absolute speedy recovery. Our thoughts do go out to Tony and his family at this time. So, interesting week, fair to say, coming up for Spurs. And I mean, I want to say that we've been quite short of some good news at the moment on the injury front. Let's bring everybody up to date of where we are right now with Spurs going into the week of the North London Derby, because it hasn't been great news so far as we start the week for listeners on audio. Spurs have been had a potential injury scare after the news that Sarr was forced off whilst playing for Senegal at the latter part of the week. Now, Spurs at the moment were as many as potentially up to 13 first-team players currently potentially out of the picture. And in addition to Pat Matassar being a doubt, Lucas Bergvall was sent home early from Sweden due to ongoing issues following his concussion. So he's also on his way back, if he's not already, at Hotspur Way. On the other side of North London, they are waiting on understanding where Gabriel is. Gabriel was forced off injured shortly before Sarr's withdrawal. Now, he's a key figure. We figured out this in the back room, actually, for Arsenal, around set pieces. Andrews confirmed the defender would undergo further tests, but was unable to confirm how bad his injury is. So it'll be interesting to see, of course, what will happen on the injury front. We'll definitely get an update from Frank later, of course, ahead of this week. But Jace, does the North London derby come at a good time or a bad time for Spurs? That's a stupid question ever asking if it comes at a good time or a bad time when we're going up to the Emirates.
Well, I think we'd like to be able to pick something like our best team for it, for sure. But they've got a few problems. Let's see how the rest of the week goes, how many more players drop out on either side. But, you know, they're coming off a slight slip up at Sunderland. So I'm sure they'll be doubly determined when Man City having closed that gap a little bit last weekend. So let's be honest, our record there is so poor, isn't it, that I'm not sure there's ever a good time to go there. They're certainly not struggling, but you know, we have to make the most of it because we've slipped up ourselves at home. So big week ahead for us, for sure. But we need some bodies on the pitch. I'm a little bit worried that if you've just got Bentancur and Palhinha in midfield and there's no Sarr, there's no Bergvall, we could well end up with a few academy kids on the bench as well. So that's the worry at the moment.
Absolutely. Martin, let's steer the show over to you. We've not had a chance to have you properly on here since the earlier part of the season. So be interesting what you've made of Thomas Frank so far to date. Spurs, that in terms of the data test, they do currently sit in the top 6. They are unbeaten so far in their Champions League group. Yes, we've had an exit, of course, of the Carabao Cup to Newcastle United. It's been fairly, you'd say, inconsistent over the last few weeks. What have you made of Spurs under the Dane so far, as we do reach what many do call quite a pivotal point in the season going into the Christmas period?
Yeah, I think we can't pretend it's been plain sailing. It hasn't. It's been up and down. It's been watching a liner sort of tossed around on a fairly rough seas at times. There's been some real positives. I think there's more definition and shape to the team in terms of you can see the defensive plan. They're not wide open. But it is particularly at home where when they have to make the game, it's been pretty stodgy. There's been a lack of fluidity, a lack of certainty, a lack of poise. The only game they've really played quite well going forward, and even that took a while, was Copenhagen, actually, apart from Burnley at the very start. So it hasn't been a great watch. I think anyone who tries to pretend otherwise would be deluding themselves. But nor has it been awful, as I often say and did before the show. You know, things are never as good or as bad as they might seem. If you'd said to anyone realistically, right, 11 games in, so nearly a third of the season, and you'd be above Liverpool and United and Villa and Newcastle, you'd probably have taken that, irrespective of how they play. And the fact is that despite some poor performances, and at home in particular, they have been poor. I mean, they were poor against Wolves. They were beyond poor against Bournemouth and Chelsea. They were just pretty poor against United. It was two drunks falling in a bar type sort of match, wasn't it? It was awful, in truth, in terms of the quality and standard. Yet they've got some great results away from home. You know, the win at Everton was really important. The point at Brighton was a good one. Leeds haven't, you know, it's the only game that Leeds have lost at home. Obviously, the win against City early on. So it's been okay in terms of results. The results have been better than performances. The home performances have been as bad as the results. But there are reasons for that. I mean, yes, everyone gets injuries. Of course they do. And you have to deal with it. But I was watching the United game, and it was a poor game. That's as good as United can be. That's their best team. That's their best 11 players, effectively. It wasn't Tottenham's best 11 players. You know, you wouldn't want to start a right back at left back, which happened for a variety of reasons. You'd want the centre forward, who's a centre forward who can actually press the goalkeeper and defenders and also hold the ball up as opposed to fall over and say, why haven't I got a free kick, as you get with Richarlison. You've got the Swedish schemer, who was the best player last season, who hasn't kicked the ball yet, and we don't know when Kulusevski will be back, but he's really, really important. You lost the legs of Sarr, of Bergvall, rather, who you really want for different reasons. That's concussion. And as we know, that was an issue still when he went to the Sweden camp this week. So hopefully another week off and he'll be in a better shape and able to play on next Sunday. So there are lots of elements to it. But I think you need to be a bit calm. I mean, this time last year, points-wise, we were a pretty similar position. But
we're two better off at the moment. We're two better off at the moment compared to last season. Yeah,
they all season last year they looked a mess. There was and even the season before. I think the game that summed it up actually was probably, and people will forget this, but we are playing them quite soon. The season before, when we had that brilliant run, and one of those games was Fulham at home, and we won the game 2-0. And Maddison scored them both, and Calvin Bassey was awful. And the last 10 minutes. They could have scored 5 goals because we were so wide open and we got away with it that time. But last season, we didn't get away with it. And it felt like every mistake was punished. But we made so many mistakes and we were so easy to play against. Now, I don't think you could say at any point, with the exception of the Chelsea game where just no one turned up, I don't think Spurs are easy to play against. They're certainly not easy to watch. I think we can all agree that. But they're not easy to play against. So there is some more resolve in that side now, I think. And even that Chelsea game, Romero didn't play. He's a massive part of the defence because Van der Ven is much more, and it's not to denigrate or be criticise Danso. I'm not doing that at all. But he can only be what he can be, and he's not Romero. Romero is a really top world-class defender who makes other players look and feel better alongside him. Is it any wonder that the corner that United scored was scored after Romero's off the pitch? I think there may be a degree of linkage in that. I think he might have organised them better had he been on the pitch. So there's all of these factors. And yes, everyone gets injuries. They're not an excuse. Never allow them to be an excuse. But they can be a factor. And I think that what we need to see from Frank's side is more cohesiveness, more attacking courage. Actually, at the moment, I was watching the first hour of that United game. They were scared to hurt them. They were making safe passes all the time. That they were worried about making mistakes. Now, when you play on the counter away from home, it's easier to play those passes because you've got more space to play. When you've got to make the game, it's harder. So you've got to be braver. And I don't think at the moment at home that enough of them are brave enough in those clutch situations when they've got to do something different, something exciting, something spontaneous. They're all a little bit safe and soft and what's the easy pass rather than what's the pass we should be trying to play.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think very, very fair points there. I mean, Jason, I actually asked you this, I think we know it's on previous shows. This period now coming for Spurs, we've got now games between now and March. There's going to be no other international breaks right until then. So there's a real, decent amount of fixtures now to try and hopefully build some momentum, build some rhythm. How crucial do you think, Jace, these next couple of months are in terms of trying to see what a Frank Spurs will look like? Because that's simply not as easy to do, because I think you've mentioned this before, the fact of every game 3 to 4 days, it makes it very, very hard to really try and work the squad. And in combination to that with the injuries as well, that does make it harder, right, Jason? How interesting will this period be to really see what Thomas Frank's Tottenham is going to try and look like?
Well, without a doubt, there's some big home games to come, isn't there? With Fulham at home, Brentford home, Liverpool home, Sunderland home. They're the next 4, and Liverpool are nowhere near the Liverpool that we've seen last year. So with our home form being so poor as it is, you'd have to look at that and think, we got to be targeting minimum 10 points from those 4 games, haven't we? If one comes unstuck, so be it. But we badly need to arrest our home form and start winning games at home. And the Brentford one would be a bit of an embarrassment if we end up slipping up in that one. So it is a crucial time. But, we're at a stage of the season where plenty of, how many teams are in Europe? 8 teams, is it, in Europe? I think it's 8 this season, isn't it?
Believe
My
so,
mind
yep.
serves me right. So, they've all got the same problems as us. We've got games with Forest, games with Liverpool, games with Palace in amongst that period, games with Newcastle. They'll all be on Saturday, Wednesday type, or, weekend, midweek fixtures. You've got one or two of the others will be involved with the Carabao Cup quarterfinals just before Christmas. And then you've got the Christmas period anyway. So, you're into a hectic schedule for pretty much most teams now, with the exception maybe of West Ham or Wolves. Everyone's got stuff going on. And it is important to start. It's difficult to get real consistency in this period because, like you say, it's thick and fast. There's injuries. There's, it's very difficult to get into a rhythm of games, but it's just a matter of being robust enough. And maybe this is the type of time when you don't look so much at the style, and it is just a little bit of ugly having to dig results out. And there's nowhere more that we have to dig one out than on the weekend, mate.
Absolutely. I think that's a very fair point. I think, we do know, Martin, as well as you do, that the noise that surrounds the big London derbies, the Chelseas, the Arsenal games, right? There's always noise and there seems to always be consequences, not managerial departures on the back of these games, but they do create naturally a lot of hysteria, a lot of noise. When you look at the recent game against Chelsea, that situation around, of course, Mickey van der Ven, Jed Spence blanking Thomas Frank come off the pitch. Spurs have since played it down. Frank has played it down. He said the players were in the next day. They apologised to him. Is it now really a season about trying to keep calm heads and allowing the manager to get his feet under the table and also giving the opportunities, which we're going to come on to in terms of the transfer window, if possible, to bring in a potential quality forward or forward-thinking players that are going to allow Thomas Frank to hopefully try and get Spurs better in that front area of the pitch?
Yeah, something's got to happen in January, but I think we've got to get through it first. We've got 6 weeks until January. It's about what happens in the interregnum, because if things go badly, then it adds to a sense of panic around January. If things go well, then players who come into a team with a bit more confidence and therefore probably play better, because that's the nature of the game. I just think that there's elements there that we need to see progress in now, and one of them is just being more adventurous with the ball at home. On Sunday, of course, we're away, and what I want, of course, I want Tottenham to win, and I take a result, any result, I take a win or a draw. But actually, what I really want to see for the first time in a few years is to go there and actually have a go, because too many times, particularly away from home, and this is going back to Pochettino, we've gone to Arsenal, we've gone to Chelsea, and we've gone to Liverpool, and we've gone to United, and we've been rolled over because we've been rubbish. We've had no belief, no conviction, no nothing. They might as well have turned around, not even bother getting out the dressing room, back on the coach and home and give the 3 points over. And I want to see a change from that. And it may not always work. You can play well and lose. But I want to see some courage and bravery and conviction in the performance, rather than the sort of stuff we've seen too many times on those away games. The exception, of course, we go to City. Every time we go to City, we think we can get a result. Yeah. It's bonkers, because City are the best football team in the league, probably. Yeah. And we go there and we play really well. As we did this season, it was a really good performance. But they're the only ones where we go and actually think we can get something. And it's United actually more so over the last few years, because they're rubbish. But the others, when did we last get a result at Liverpool? Proper result. I can't remember the last.
Under Redknapp, I think. Go back to Redknapp, haven't you? I think at Liverpool. Yeah.
It's a long time. When did we last win at Arsenal? 2010. One win at Arsenal in 30 years in the league. It's a joke. It's unacceptable. Chelsea, one win in 30 years now, 25 years in the league. Unacceptable. And how many of those performances have we come away from thinking, oh, we're a bit unlucky there, we had a bit of a go at it? Maybe half a dozen, tops. Couple of the Liverpool games, couple at Chelsea, and the draws we got at Arsenal when we were at various stages we were the better team and didn't win, but not enough. And the last few years, none of them, absolutely none of them have we actually looked like. Last year Liverpool, humiliating, embarrassing, particularly when we go a goal up, ridiculous. Last year at Chelsea, didn't lay a glove on them. Last year at Arsenal, we scored a goal. Yeah, they got a dodgy goal from a corner. Yeah, we weren't good enough. We didn't cross the halfway line, and that's not acceptable. That can't be Tottenham Hotspur. You're allowed to go out on your shield sometimes, and we haven't done that. We've gone out without even taking our sword out of our scabbard too many times. And for me, that's not what the clubs should be about. And I said, it's not this manager or the last manager. It's a collective thing over a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades. It isn't as if it's something that's new. And I still don't understand why it is. It's got to change. And the one thing you'll say about Frank teams, his Brentford team, they thought they could have a go. They thought they could get a result anywhere. But not initially. They knew initially they were coming up as a team with no top flight history in 50 years or whatever. They had to. It was baby steps, but they became quite big steps quite quickly, and they became a really effective team, and they outperformed what they should have done given their resources. Now, the resources at Tottenham are vastly superior to the ones he had at Brentford. So you would imagine over 12 to 18 months that progress should be pretty rapid. But at the moment, quite clearly, it's still baby steps.
That's very, very fair points. I know, Jason, you've actually raised that before. I mean, I think you've done me a table before showing me our results against the top 4, the top 6, and how bad our record is, especially away from home. Martin kind of rattled it off there, our record against the traditional top 3, top 4. Is that still a mentality problem? Because, we've changed the manager, like Martin has said, on so many occasions. We've changed the players on so many occasions. What is it about trying to get a result at the likes of an Arsenal or Chelsea or Liverpool? What is it? Can you put your finger on it?
It's incredible, isn't it? Because Martin's right. So many different managers, so many different sets of players. There's been periods when we've had a good side, and there's been times in that when we've been crap. I think Anfield and the Emirates, we actually won in the same season, that 2010 season. If I remember rightly, that kit, we won at Liverpool at the end of the season, didn't we? And we won at Arsenal in, was it October, November type of time? So to win at both those venues in the same year. But I think those 3 fixtures, I think it's 4 wins in 99 games, which is ludicrous. Which is ludicrous because you look at Brentford, they've gone to Stamford Bridge and won 3 years in a row, and Palace have won at Stamford Bridge or won at Anfield and things like that, and won at the Emirates. I mean, it's just bonkers how we struggle in those games. And different sets of players.
I was going to say, how can Yunus Kabul be the score of our last winning league goal at Arsenal? Seriously? We had Harry Kane for 10 years.
and Modric and Van der Ven.
Van der Vaart.
Modric and Van der Vaart at Anfield. I mean, it's just... And don't forget, the day we won at Stamford Bridge, Kane didn't start.
No.
He actually came off the bench, I think. So, it's not won a trophy. And we won at the Emirates in the Cup when Kane came off the bench, I think, that night as well. He didn't start the game. So it's just bonkers, isn't it? No trophies and couldn't win any of those away games. But I don't know how you fix it. It's, those clubs must take a lot of confidence when they play us, and they're obviously aware of that record. But so many different sets of players. I mean, this time it'll be Kudus. Never. He's not been subjected to that record, and Xabi Simons hasn't. But everyone we bring in, we drag it down to that level straight away. And Martin's right. It's not just going there and losing. It's the manner of so many of those defeats that's just painful watching it, isn't it? Sometimes, and it has to improve this year. A couple of years ago, we went to the Emirates, got a draw. We actually played okay that game.
And his first season. Played very well.
The one good thing with that is that draw cost them the title, because they think Sonny's miss at home to Man City cost them. But if they'd have beaten us that day, they'd have won the title instead of dropping the 2 points to us. So, but that apart, last year was pathetic. Do you remember Conte going there losing 3-1? And he ended up declaring, didn't he? He took players off. We were down to 10 men, and he thought, I've got a game in midweek. And we're actually in a North London derby as such, taking players off because we know the game's gone after 65 minutes. We certainly can't be doing things like that, that's for sure.
No, just on that point, Martin, I just wonder, we speak about Frank and, I think what we've suggested on here, and again, be intrigued to get your opinion on it, there's been such a level of detail and focus on the opposition that maybe there's been too much and he hasn't actually focused more on what we can do as a team. Now, we appreciate, I think I've said this numerous times, that he hasn't, for me at the moment, I think he's got the forwards really at the moment to be able to see a real attacking philosophy right now. I hope that's going to come in time, don't get me wrong. I think we should still expect more into when we're with the ball, but I think trying to get a cohesive build-up play around the forwards that we've got, I just don't think it's possible right this second without having a Solanke in the team. I think Richarlison, to be fair, I'll get your take on where you are, Richarlison, but do you feel with the Arsenal game, Frank will know the record, similar to the Chelsea record? Again, the Chelsea home performance wasn't great, but does it suit Spurs to play Does it suit Spurs to play away from home right now rather than home at the moment, Martin?
Well, it has done so far because they can play. They don't have to make the game. They can play on the counter, which is obviously easier than it is trying to force the game. It doesn't mean you necessarily drop right back, but you can play to sack them on to create space, and that's what we've done quite effectively in a few of those away games. Well, we haven't, we didn't play particularly well at Leeds when we won. We just scored 2 good goals, or with a bit of deflection, but they were well worked. Everton, we scored from 2 set pieces. It wasn't a great performance. So we were in the game because we defended pretty well. We're in the game, and then you've got a chance, and that's the key. If you're going to Arsenal, if you don't defend well at Arsenal, you're going to get beat because they're going to score from a set piece. You would have thought, even without Gabriel, they're really, really adept. You've got to defend really well. I mean, the bonkers thing is, of course, that Spurs are one of the only 2 teams in Europe who've managed to keep Erling Haaland quiet this season. I mean, that's just in itself is rather bizarre, isn't it? So we have to defend well. We have to be resourceful. I suspect you'll end up with both Bentancur and Paulinho in front of the midfield just to try and be a double screen. And normally you wouldn't want that. You certainly wouldn't want that at home. But I think away from home, they don't both protect the ball. Particularly, actually, Bentancur when he runs with the ball and protects it is quite effective. When he hasn't got them take defenders on, he's trying to just control possession. I think this is probably his best game. And we still haven't seen. We've only seen flickers of Simmons, it has to be said. But I'm not totally surprised. Arguably the 2 best players in the Bundesliga last year were outside of Bayern Munich players, were Xavi Simons and Florian Wirtz, and neither of them have played particularly well in their first 3 months in the Premier League because it is a very different league. And look, Harry Kane is an unbelievable goal scorer. We know that. He would score goals in any league. He wouldn't be scoring as many goals for any club in the Premier League this season that he scored for Bayern Munich because it's easier. It's just easier. And he's playing for the dominant team as well. In the same way, Simmons and Wirtz are both trying to work out how to create space in a much more physical, aggressive midfield environment than they've played in before. And I've no doubt in my mind that both of them will prosper. I hope that Wirtz doesn't prosper until 3 years' time, but I think he will before that. And likewise, I think Simmons will become a very good player. But also, Simmons will be a much better player if there's a centre forward holding up the ball and creating space. If there's a better attacking shape to the team. If the other team are being forced by the centre forward to give the ball away, so he picks it up 40 yards from goal rather than 60 yards from goal. All of those things are factors. If you're hurting a team, they have to look after the immediate threats, which creates space for the 10. And that's his position, isn't it? Really, I think he's a 10 rather than an inverted left winger. He wants to be there behind the striker. That's only going to happen if we're actually hurting the other team, and we haven't done that enough, particularly at home.
Yep. Do you think, Jace, on that point Martin's mentioning there, do you hope that in these next couple of months, despite the fact we're saying here and we're sitting here saying that there is no international break now until obviously March of next year, games are coming thick and fast, would you hope to see there's going to be some involvement in the build-up play, in the final third, in these next few months, or do you think, you know, like some Spurs fans out there, not all Spurs fans, think that we do desperately need to look at reinforcements in January in the attacking area if we are going to see that? I mean, how do you pitch that for you in these games coming up? Because they come in thick and fast, and you know, once that schedule gets going, I mean, it's rapid, really, every 3-4 days.
I think like Martin's right. For us to be really fluent going forward, a lot of that depends on a fit Dominic Solanke, and we just have no idea when he's coming back, do we? I mean, you know, not being funny, if Thomas Frank says he's available for the Fulham game, doesn't mean he's fully fit, does it? It's you know, he's been out all season. It's going to take 2-3 weeks for him to minimum of match time. Usually it'll be coming off the bench for 10 minutes here, 15, 20 minutes to get up to match speed. So you're probably still going to be a month away from at minimum of a month away from seeing a properly fit Dominic Solanke. And then it will partly depend as well. I mean, he was the absolute pressing machine, but with that ankle, will he have the confidence to go and press? I don't know what the actual ankle injury is, other than it's an ankle injury. But you tend not to want to go in for block tackles if you've had ankle injuries. A bit like Harry years ago, didn't he? When he stopped doing that real forward press because ankle injuries were a big problem for him going back. So, you know, how soon before we see Dom Solanke fully fit? But we definitely need that. It hasn't helped with Kolo Muani being injured, because there was just starting to be signs that maybe he'd get himself settled. I don't know how long, you know, we'll find out this week how long he's going to be, whether that's 2 weeks or whether that's a month or 6 weeks or whatever. So it's difficult to get that momentum, particularly because Richie is just, it's painful watching him at times. You know, when Martin's talking about they look like drunk in the Man United game, I said it the other day, he looks like a drunk leaving the pub every time he walks on the pitch at the moment. And it's sad to see him like that, because, you know, like I said, I think a couple of weeks ago, he's not a poor player, but he's a bang average player. But we know that Richarlison, there's a better Richarlison than we're seeing at the moment.
Absolutely.
You know, he has had little periods at Tottenham where he's looked okay for 3 or 4 games, and he's got his goals and that. But at the moment, he looks woefully off it. His confidence is gone, but his touch is gone. His timing of his runs is gone, and I think it's going to be very hard for Thomas Frank to look particularly free flowing while you've got Richarlison and that type of form to work with. And you do reach a stage where, when do you chuck Dane Scarlett? When do you give him an opportunity? I'm not suggesting Dane Scarlett's going to come in and rip it up for 90 minutes, but there's got to be a time when you start looking at it and thinking we have to give him 20 minutes off the bench and that, because pretty much everyone that's worked with him says how good his finisher he is. But obviously, if you're looking to finish, then you've got to be creating chances to finish for him, because he's probably not going to be your back-to-goal striker that's going to hold the ball up, is he? But there comes a stage where you have to take the risk and say, look, let's give this kid a chance. Slavia Prague is the prime example to let Dane Scarlett have a start and see how he gets on with it.
Yeah, and I think, by the fact of the matter is that if we don't see, you know, more goals in the team and, you know, chances being missed by Richarlison, those calls will become louder and louder for Scarlett to get definitely an opportunity. Look, we are going to squeeze in our first break of the show. For our listeners that are on audio, we've got nearly over 3,500 that are watching us live. As always, thanks ever so much for incredible support for Last Word on Spurs. I'm joined alongside me by Jason McGovern. I'm joined by a brilliant returning guest, big Spurs fan, of course. Martin Lipton is back. Martin, we've heard you a couple of times in pressers so far this season. You might not have thought we've heard you. We have heard you. What have you made of Frank so far and transitioning into Tottenham in general, and how he's finding the expectancy of the role, especially maybe those home games? What have you made of him so far in the pressers for you?
Well, look, I've not been unimpressed, shall I say. I think a lot of his things he says are very clever. He's a smart cookie, no doubt about it. He knows, he's not stupid. He can see what's going on. But at the same point, he doesn't want to throw any of his players under the bus, and he could have done to Spence and Van der Ven, and he didn't. And I you know, it's interesting that Tuchel has had a dig at Spence and saying it wasn't, you know, he basically was lucky to be in the England squad, even though he didn't play him then, because he didn't like the way he behaved after that game. Now, I think it was quite good that then you've got Van der Ven putting his hand up saying, look, I went and apologised. It was unacceptable. I think that's good. So he made his point. He told them in the privacy of the dressing room. He didn't go out and kill them in the media, because there's nothing to gain by that. You only kill a player if you want rid of him. You don't do that if you think you can get something out of it, even if you've only got to get something out of him for 3 months. And I don't think that's the case with either of those, for obvious reasons. So I think he's trying to play a pretty average hand as well as he can. And if that means he might occasionally bluff on 2 pairs to try and get the hand, then he's going to do that. Trouble is, you can't bluff on 7 high, can you? I mean, you've got no chance. And at the moment, he hasn't had 4 of a kind. He's barely had 3 of a kind too often in his hand, and that's been the problem. But I do think that there's I've dealt with him a few times over the years. I said before when he got the job, I'm hugely impressed by him as a bloke and as a coach, and I think there's something really good about him and his psychology and his man management. But you can't do any of that without the players. And sometimes if you've got to be willing to rattle the cages a little bit, and I think he has to start doing that now and trying to get those players to be braver. As I said, that's the thing, because in the end the results reflect on the manager. And there is no way that he wants a team that goes out against Chelsea and basically doesn't have a shot. He doesn't want to have a team that goes out against United and doesn't have a shot for an hour. Even though there were, in the end we could have scored 3 or 4 in that game. There were 2 great saves by Lamans, and the 2 we did get, and there was a chance to be Charlotte in the first half. But that was about it. Actually, there wasn't much else other than those 5 moments. And you're not going to win a game if you only create, or very often, if you only create 5 half chances or 5 chances a game. Because, unless you've got Harry Kane or Haaland up front, and sadly we haven't got either of those at the moment, you might score 1 or 2 of those. You're not going to score them all. And you might need to score 3, and sometimes you don't score any of those chances. And it's the ludicrous goal from 30 yards that goes in. But you've got to create more to have a chance of scoring. And we're not creating enough chances. It's as simple as that.
On that point then, Martin, regular viewer and listener, King Huddle says here, Ricky, it's the midfield and has been for years. We'll never make top 4 without addressing this. Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, Villa and Newcastle all have considerably better midfielders than us. Do you agree with that, Martin?
Well, I've been told that Newcastle got the best midfield in the league. And then I watched them against West Ham and I watched them against Brentford. And I thought, well, maybe they haven't actually, because they were pretty rugby. Look, Arsenal clearly, they got Rice, they got Zubimendi, they got Eze. They're a very talented midfield. Liverpool's midfield at the moment, Szoboszlai's a really good player. McAllister's gone backwards. Gravenberch doesn't know what he's trying to do. Wirtz can't kick a ball. No, I don't think Liverpool are that much better than us. I'll be honest. They may have nominally better players, but they're not much better. United, no. City, yes. We beat City though. Chelsea, Caicedo is a truly outstanding player. I'm not so sold on Enzo, but he's obviously effective. Chelsea's best 2 would be Caicedo and Lavia, but Lavia's never fit. He's even more injured than any of our lot. But we need more strength, unquestionably. But if you only, we'll discuss it soon, but if you're looking at January, when realistically, if you think that Kulusevski is going to be fit, you only sign 2 because you can only make 3 changes in a European squad. Are you going to sign a midfielder, or are you going to try and put Kulusevski in there and hope that Simmons comes off and try and find 2 attacking players who can actually hurt teams? A left winger who's really going to go at them and stretch teams. And although I think Odegaard's playing a bit better now, but he doesn't really grab the game by the short and curlers, does he?
Not at the moment. No.
What you want.
No.
And you would want that. I'd rather prioritise those areas, but I also think we need a cover left back who's actually a left back and a left-sided centre half, or you play Van de Ven as the second left back. Well, that's an option as well, but I wouldn't want to do that just because it would mean him having to sprint up and down all game, and we know that his hamstrings aren't that great.
Yeah, well, there was a wonderful run that I think many would have seen it during this international break he made for Holland. The unbelievable run from Mickey Van de Ven, which again shows you the pace the guy has got. Just before we do go at mine on the transfer window, Jace, just to address, we spoke about the home form recently and how that does need to improve. Just 5 points out of a possible 15. You brought that stat to me in my attention that it's the worst so far of any manager under the ENIC era. Do you expect that, Jace, to pick up with regards to what's on the horizon for Spurs in terms of games to come? Of course, you mentioned Fulham on the horizon. They've got Brentford on the horizon. How important is that during these next 6 to 8 weeks that home form does improve and we start getting results there?
It has to, doesn't it? It's because the pressure and the talk around Thomas Frank, whether it's justified or not, will continue to be there. The noise and that around him, and I think he's. I think there's a difference in his press conferences and things at Tottenham. In that at Brentford, he was never really asked about styles of football. He was never really asked about. There's not the pressure around you if you go 2 or 3 games without a win. But at Tottenham, it is big, and there's no doubt we have to start winning at games because the crowd will start to get on the backs. You're seeing more and more, players getting booed off and things like that again, and it's not something you ideally want, but we know that it happens at Tottenham, and the only people that can change it are those players and him. We constantly talk about trying to build atmosphere. We constantly want more support from the crowd, but they're the ones that have got to change it. And that Fulham game, particularly if it's on the back of a couple of difficult results next week, when the crowd are starting to think, right, we want that Arsenal performance to be put right. We want our home form to be put right. It's huge demands on him, and hopefully it's one of those things that when you get that first one, that how important that first one actually is, and then you can hopefully build some momentum from that. But you need to get that first one across the line, Rick. And Fulham are where in the table at the moment? 16th, 15th, 16th.
Fulham 15th in the league. Fulham at the moment
15th. So we have actually, when you look at our Premier League wins, they've come against teams towards that bottom end, with the exception of Man City. So it is crucial that we get that win and start to turn that form for sure. Because the crowd, you can feel it in the crowd. There's tension in the crowd at the style, at the results. You've seen a couple of players starting to bite, and we need more from the crowd. We need this from the crowd, but you're the ones that have got to turn it round for us. Yeah.
Martin, you wrote that amazing book that we had you on this show for all those years ago, the Glory years. A lot of it referred to, obviously, the times that we had at White Hart Lane and some of the special nights we had there. Look, there was some awful games at White Hart Lane, which many don't remember, but there was some awful nights there. I mean, in terms of the home form, look, what it's like at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. The locals, they do want to be, and I hate keep using that word, entertain, because, look, I mean, I personally wasn't entertained a lot last season, but again, people thought it was entertaining seeing certain score lines there and certain games there. But do you expect, Martin, that home form to pick up in the next 6 to 8 weeks? And are you concerned if it doesn't? Because it does feel like the home fans, especially when you're going there, I say bi-weekly, every couple of weeks, and you're paying the price that you're paying to go to the stadium, you want to see results. And again, for Jason, he travels 2.5, 3 hours there, 2 or 3.5 hours back. Again, I'd appreciate that some want to see more than what they're getting right now. Will that improve, Martin, do you think?
It's imperative it improves, because that defines the mood around the club. If you win your home games, then the away games are a bonus to a degree. There are some you expect to win, some you recognise you're going to lose, some you're going to get a draw. If you're winning 12 at home, it changes everything. If you're winning 3 at home, how many games have we won in the last year at home? 1 game in the league?
Well, it's 1 in the last 20, isn't it? Oh, sorry, my apologies. 3 in the last 20, I believe.
Yeah,
I mean, it's, the last 20. Yeah,
it's ridiculous. You can't have that. It's unacceptable. So of course there isn't just what they're seeing this season that the fans are getting frustrated about. It's what they saw all of last season.
Of course, which is obviously nothing to do with Frank.
And rightly so, because it's not been good enough. And you want to win a game though, but and if that means if we hold out for a 2-1 against United, everyone goes home happy, even though the performance has been rubbish. So sometimes it is scoreboard journalism, as they call it. The results define the mood, and that to a degree is true. Even if you're not playing well, and if you nick a 1-0, everything feels a bit better. But eventually, you run out of luck doing that. You've got to start playing better. You've got to start creating more chances. You've got to start hurting teams. You've got to start controlling games and playing with conviction. And let's not try and kid ourselves, that we haven't seen from Tottenham at home this season. in the league. We have seen control and certainty and decent attacking play away from home because it's easier. We need to be able to change that narrative, and that starts against Fulham, but it's got to continue for the next 3 or 4, because then you're going into January with actually, well, they're not been brilliant, but they're 6th or 7th in the league, and they've got a real chance, and they're still right up with Liverpool and about just above United and beating Newcastle, and Sunderland will fall away, and it's about top 5 for the Champions League, and everything feels different. But if you don't win those, if Tottenham don't beat Fulham and don't beat Brentford, then the next home game is: are you ever going to win a home game for Thomas?
Mm.
And the questions are negative questions, because they have to be. And Jace was right. He didn't get that at Brentford because no one cares about Brentford apart from Brentford fans. No one's interested in Brentford apart from Brentford fans because they're Brentford. And that's not to decry. I think Brentford played some great stuff last season at times.
Yeah.
Really, really good. But no one watches them. In the same way, I don't think people realise just how good a team Bournemouth are.
Oh,
I think they're a really, really good football team. But unless you're a Bournemouth fan and there's 12,000 of them, no one knows.
mm.
And, Tottenham's a different kettle of fish. People either want Spurs to win, or a lot of fans want them to lose because they're not Spurs fans. And that's fair enough. Like, I want Arsenal to lose every week and I want Chelsea to lose. Of course you do. That's part of it, and so you should. But there's much more attention. So if Spurs lose 2 on the spin, it's a big story. Spurs lose 3 on the spin, it's a crisis. Brentford lose 3 on the spin. Well, they need to win, don't they, now? That's all it is. That's the difference. But it's not just Tottenham. Look at what's happened with Liverpool in the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Look at what's happened at United over the last 2 years. So we're not the only ones who get the scrutiny. So it actually comes with the territory. It's what, if you want to be a big club, you've got to be willing to be criticised when it's not going well. I don't think there's any problem with that.
How do you find that point, Mark? Because I mentioned it a couple of times that you've been in a couple of presses with him so far this season. He seems to be taking his time a lot with his answers at certain points where he's almost thinking about what he says because he knows the scrutiny that he's under now in comparison to Brentford, then Tottenham. Do you think that, I spoke to you about that transition earlier. Do you think he's still working on that and understanding the demands of the fans? Because it is, again, like you mentioned there, slightly different in terms of the nature around the fact, we've already been knocked out of the Carabao Cup, for example. I think Frank's record in the FA Cup, forgive me, I think rarely, if ever, was he past the 4th rounds. And we're already in this situation now where, although we've been unbeaten in the Champions League, I think, don't want to be negative. It comes across negative. Not sure we can win the Champions League. I think it's, doubtful we're going to win the Premier League, although we're not horrendously off the top spots. But, I think I'll be realistic about it. The FA Cup is the most winnable competition. It's not a record he's got a great competition in. So where are you even in terms of the cup approach? Because again, that's all by nature of the luck of the draw as well, isn't it, to some degree?
Yes. And if you draw a non-league side at home or away, you can play the reserves. I think if you get a Premier League team, you're going to have to play a stronger side. One of the reasons that he didn't prioritise the FA Cup at Brentford was because he had a much smaller first team squad. And his priority was making sure Brentford stayed in the Premier League, because let us be honest, that was more important to Brentford. If they'd ended up in the quarter-final, then it's a different matter. If they got through a couple of rounds, I think they lost to Plymouth last year at home, or maybe it was the year before. But if they win those games, then it's different, because you get to the last 8, you go all in. But that was Brentford. He's not at Brentford anymore. He is aware of that. He's at Tottenham Hotspur. Therefore, he has to approach those games in a different way. But I remember, I think the last Saturday afternoon game at White Hart Lane was actually an FA Cup tie against Wycombe. And we very nearly lost that. 1-4-3 at the death. It was rubbish. We were that. The big centre forward called it. I think
Akinfenwa.
Yeah, Cameron Carter-Vickers showed in the space of 90 minutes why in no future.
That's right.
It was awful. So
Kevin Wimmer as well, wasn't it? Kevin Wimmer played that day.
In the semi-final.
Yeah.
When, of course, Poch played, Son at left back and gave away a penalty.
Yeah.
So let's just see. It's January. We'll get the draw in a couple of weeks, won't we? I mean, the second round's coming up. Is it next weekend? I think weekend after.
We'll
get the draw.
After.
We'll know who we're playing, and it'll go from there. But I think he'll know that it's important to try and get a run in the competition, and rightly so. But his prime thing at the moment is just trying to stabilise everything and get results. I mean, we virtually, if you beat Slavia Prague, then that guarantees into the sort of at least the intermediate knockout stage of the Champions League. So you'd fancy them to be into the last 16 of that with a bit of luck. Were something to happen really impressive in the last 4 games, and they get into the last 16 by right. I think that's unlikely because I think they'll need more points this year than last year.
Yeah.
But that will take European football into February. Again, that's something to look at. Are Spurs going to win the Champions League? No. But getting to the last 8, for example, is worth an awful lot of money. And that benefits everyone, particularly, and it also gives you coefficient points, which mean you're in a better seeding position for following seasons and all of those things. So you're not going to throw them away. Look, I don't really fancy them at PSG for obvious reasons. Although, let's be honest, the last time we played PSG, we should have won the game. It's only 3 months ago. I know that they were fresh off the beach, but even so, we actually played pretty well that day. And had Paulinho been fit to last 90, I think we'd have held out to win that game 2-0. But there you go. I mean, ifs and ands and pots and pans. I mean, there's no point in worrying about what might have been because it didn't happen. But actually, that wasn't a bad performance.
Yeah. No, again, and you look back at that, I think many might have been frustrated by the last 20 minutes or so, Jason being there and spending what he spent to be there. Jason, the Champions League group at the moment, I know at the moment, do you feel like we maybe missed an opportunity there to really gate crash the top 8? Because the feeling has been, but the teams that to finish in the top 8 are far superior to us. But do you think with the draw that we had in terms of the competition, I think I actually labelled it at the time when he was on the show. I think we called it was a pretty much a Europa League group bar PSG. So have we maybe missed out an opportunity to try and finish in the top 8 and we'll get you to unmute from that on your end?
I think we have. I mean, well, it hasn't gone yet, but I think Martin's right. I mean, last year it was 16 points. Maybe this year it'll be 17, 18. But even 18 points was 6 wins. When you look at that table, 4 of the teams we've played so far have got 1 win between them in the 4 games. So, we went to Boda last year and got a win. And Monaco this year, it's not a scary fixture, Monaco. I honestly believe we should be sitting there at the moment with 12 points. You look at Newcastle, they've had Barcelona at home. They're above us. We haven't had one of those really difficult ones yet. And Slavia Prague, you've got Frankfurt have just lost 5-1 to Liverpool at home. So that's another one. Slavia Prague, that's another game you should be looking to win. So there's 2 wins there, and you would hope that we can beat Dortmund at home. So there's another 9 points minimum to pick up from those 3 games. Then if we get something in Paris, so be it. Paris was the free hit. But, those drop points, particularly in Norway, where, let's be honest, we were lucky to get a point that night. Incredibly lucky. And yet, they haven't won a game in the Champions League. Copenhagen haven't won a Champions League game. Villarreal haven't won a Champions League game. I think Monaco have won 1. So it is disappointing that we aren't sitting there with maximum points. However bad we think we are, when you look at that Champions League, there's a lot of ordinary sides in it, and there was no reason for us not to be sitting there joint top of the league with 12 points. There really wasn't this year.
I think the points that City dropped were against Monaco. So, it's actually quite tough to win away in Europe. Still is always. Look, we were really lucky against both of them. Let's be honest. We should have lost both matches.
Yeah.
But in that, we still managed to find a way. Crawl back from 2 down in Norway, and hold out somehow thanks to one of 3 or 4 top performances by Vicario this season alone. And I know he's dropped. It might be down for a couple of goals, but I think he's made a lot of very good performances and big saves to get that point. And that, if Jason's right, if we were to win those 3, and it's a big if, but we should beat Prague next month, 17 points might well be enough for the for the top 8.
Mm.
And then suddenly things feel very different come March.
Yeah. But I think also, Jay,
And
go on,
there is real importance to try and get into that top 8 this year, because the playoff round is 3 days before Arsenal and 3 days after Arsenal in the Premier League in February. And on the week where you've got, which will be our biggest fixture in the season at home, for sure.
Of course.
They'll certainly be sitting there with their feet up all week. The last thing we want to do is have a stressful game on the Wednesday night in a playoff round against one of the big boys, or where you've got to pick your strongest team and you've got to go all out for it, and then you've got the second leg straight after it. So you ideally want to give yourself if there was no worse fixture to have during that playoff week than Arsenal at home. That's the week you kind of thought, let's have Fulham at home, or let's have one of the, not necessarily easier fixtures, but a less high profile game where if you'd have ended up losing at home to Fulham, there's no big meltdown if you've got those 2 Champions League games. But you certainly don't want to be going out the Champions League and losing at home to Arsenal in the space of 4 days, that's for sure.
No, you don't. You don't. No, so I think it's important you mentioned that point there, Jace. That's why, again, we'll have to see, like Martin says, if there's an opportunity to still finish in the top 8, that would be great. But I think we're putting ourselves in a precarious position where there are games that really, if you do feel performing, we would have hopefully been in a better place. But we shall wait and see. Look, we are going to go for our final break of the show for our listeners and audio. Again, guys, thank you ever so much for your support for Last One on Spurs. We've got good nearly 5,500 of you watching us live. We're joined by Jason McGovern. We're joined by the brilliant journalist Martin Lipton over here, regular contributor to Last Word on Spurs. If you can keep liking, subscribing to the show, that would be greatly appreciated. Martin, let's quickly turn our attention to January. Couple of players that have been linked, one more prominent than the other at the moment. A guy that obviously Thomas Frank knows really well, of course, in Ivan Toney. There is suggestion that he may be available in the upcoming January transfer window. Of course, even in Saudi, he's had a really good record out there, to be fair to him, where I think, forgive me, I'm looking at his stats here, 41 goals in 59 appearances for his current side, helping them win this year's AFC Champions League. He scored 36 goals in 83 top-flight games for Brentford at the time. There has been murmurings about his character. I know he was on a Stephen Bartlett podcast where he seemed to be flirting with a move to Arsenal, despite at the time being, I think, banned due to the nature of the betting scandal at the time he had at Brentford. You give me your thoughts, Martin. Would Ivan Toney be a good fit in this Tottenham side for you under Frank?
Well, the manager knows him, which obviously helps. He's a physical player and a really strong player. He's quick. We know he takes penalties. I suspect that if Ivan Toney goes anywhere, he doesn't go anywhere until the summer. And for the simple reason, he'd have to give up half of the money he's earned in Saudi Arabia to HMRC, because it's in tax-free in Saudi. And if he comes back within 2 years of leaving the country, he owes the tax man. And I don't know about you, but I don't think too many people are going to give up £10 million plus when they can wait 6 months and keep it all.
Yeah.
And I don't care. I know you'll say, well, he earns loads of money. He does. It's still, that's a lot of money. I mean, I don't know about you, Ricky, you might be able to give up £10 million plus. You, Jace, maybe
I can tell you I can't.
10 million quid to give up. I promise you, I wouldn't give up a tenner, let alone 10 million quid. So that's just the reality of it. I think he's a sort of player. I was going to ask my Spurs people a few weeks ago to ask Frank on a sort of quietly press conference what he thought about Kane coming back or Toney coming in, because they were both obvious players that you could see him that might fit for different reasons. But again, both of them will be in the summer rather than January, I suspect.
I was going to say, the thing with Toney, you go to Saudi for the money. You don't go there and lose 18 months of your time and then come back from Saudi and pay all the money back that the benefits of going there. That's just bonkers, isn't it? You might as well have stayed in the Premier League for the 2 years. You've lost the advantage of going then. So I think it's partly it's an easy link to make because Tottenham are short of a striker. Toney wants a World Cup place.
Does he
Tony
though?
knows Thomas
I mean,
Frank.
Does
Well,
he want a World Cup place? You think he would want one? You think
well,
he
I
would
tell you
want
what, Rick. If he doesn't want a World Cup place, then I don't want him at Tottenham, because you should be busting a gut. If your attitude should be busting a gut to get a place for England in a World Cup, whoever the player is. At this stage of the season, when you're going to a World Cup year, players should be motivated and really hungry to show their form for their country. If somebody like that that's on the fringe of the squad, I think he got called up, didn't he, to one squad? I think he got called up to a squad under Thomas Tuchel.
He played 2 minutes against Senegal in the summer.
But the fact he got called up tells you that they're having a look. And if he wants to sit there and say, "Oh, stuff the World Cup, I can't be bothered with it," then that tells you there's something wrong with his attitude as well. Whether he goes there or not is irrelevant to the fact that he should be hungry to go there. And if he's hungry just sitting on money, then that's not the attitude you want, that's for sure. But I think it's just an easy link. I don't know if there's a real link yet, or it's just people putting 2 and 2 together, which is a really easy link to make, and saying, "Oh, we'll link Toney to Tottenham because Tottenham needs Toney and Toney needs a club in England." But I think it's more that, Rick, than there's real substance to it. That's for sure. They may well have asked a quick question of his agent and got an answer, but I don't think it's a genuine link where they're really. I think they're far more likely to want Semenyo to come in than they would do Ivan Toney.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Semenyo's another player that has been linked with the club, but then again, he's been linked with a lot of top, high-profile clubs. In relation to, of course, near the top of the Premier League, and again, he did sign that contract with Bournemouth in the summer. You'd imagine that was part of the reason why he signed that, because there might be opportunity there, release clause to get out in the summer. I'd be stunned if it was January. Martin, what's your gut feeling about potential targets for January? Where do you see Spurs moving, if they are to move at all? Because it does feel for certain Spurs fans out there, or many Spurs fans, I don't like to comment how many or percentage-wise, they're looking at Enix to really show how invested they are in the club now. Following on the last time we had you on here, of course, there was that takeover bid that obviously didn't really, to any degree, go any further with that inquiry at the time. I mean, what's your gauge and what we can expect maybe for January?
I think they will spend money. I don't quite know how much money they'll spend, but I think they need to, and I think they will. And I would love to see a real push for Semenyo. I think he's terrific. He plays for Ghana, but he's grown up in England, hasn't he? He's a British player with Ghanaian parentage, and he's chosen to play for his ancestry, for his familial homeland, and that's absolutely right. No issue from my stand on that whatsoever. Great thing about him, if you were to sign him in January, like with Kudos, he doesn't go away in January at the African nations either, because they bizarrely, despite qualifying for the World Cup, didn't qualify for the African Nations Cup. He is a terrific player. He scores goals. He causes no end of problems. He's a whip-it quick, clearly a really intelligent football player on the ball. You see him on the ball and you think he's looking to hurt people, and that's exactly what we need. We need to be able to hurt teams. As simple as that. So I would love to see him come in. But equally, I'd love to see Kulusevski come back, because that would change the dynamic of the team as well. If the other question is, what is the true state of Solanke ankle? And if it's not going to be right, then you've got to go and buy a centre forward. I don't know who that centre forward is, but there needs to be a focal point to that team, because there isn't one at the moment. And I don't think they're ever going to give it to try and play Dane Scarlett there. Certainly not in the short term. I think he probably, understandably, wants a striker. He'll want a striker who's got experience of a big league, preferably the Premier League, and scoring goals. That's really important. There aren't many of them, are there?
Are you just getting Mawani then, Martin? You're not sure about Mawani? Will he?
He hasn't kicked a ball yet, has he? I mean, he came in, got injured.
Yeah.
He came back, got injured. Missed a couple of chances against Copenhagen, although actually he did really well for the second goal. But the two he missed, crikey! I mean, you want a centre forward to score then, wouldn't you? So he's a good player. He plays for France. He's a terrific player.
Yeah.
But he's not in the France first team.
No,
he's a bench player for France. Now, to be fair, That's because Mbappe and Dembele and Doué are in the first.
And Mateta's playing well as well. I think Mateta's got a couple as well.
It's a pretty high bar to clear.
Yeah, of
so
course.
we shouldn't be critical of that, but he isn't a starting player for France. We need someone who is going to occupy and hurt and harass the centre half to make the keeper kick and get rid of the ball ahead of when he wants to do it, who hold the ball up to allow. Now, a fit Solanke does that job, but it's November and he's played twice, both in August, both off the bench.
Yeah.
Is he going to be right? Now, if we're told, if the doctors are going to, who knows without Spurs doctors, but if the doctors are able to say to Thomas, Frank, don't worry, by the middle of December, he's absolutely flying. Okay, maybe you don't need. But I think that's unlikely given the nature of the injury, because he's been out for so long. And I think then you get a left winger and a striker. But also next summer, it's a much bigger build, whatever happens. But realistically, because you could change 7 players, but only 3 of them can be changed in the Champions League squad. So you've got to take that into account. And that would include Kulusevski coming into the Champions League squad. That's one of the 3 changes, because he's not in the squad at the moment.
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because again, with Kulusevski, you make that point about Solanke. You know, when Kulusevski comes back, there's no guarantee he's also going to hit the ground running. You know, Kulusevski's one of those players I feel, you know, he needs to win the games normally to see the best of him. You know, again, similar to Solanke. So, I mean, again, on that point, man, how much also is this going to be in respect of also them trying to get a move for Richarlison? Because otherwise, you've got 4 or 5 forwards on the books. Not that we really favour any of them, but do you feel it may be a case of depending on trying to get Richarlison to move in a World Cup year where, again, I keep thinking about Everton. You know, he seems to be really loved at Everton. He was signing autographs there after the game recently. Do you think maybe Richarlison out, a forward in? Could you see that happening?
I think were the Saudi Pro League to come in and offer lots of money at Richarlison, they would snap their hands off.
Would he go, though? He hasn't really shown an interest in the past. Do you think he would go?
Yeah, but if he's told he isn't going to play and he's going to get paid 200 grand a week cash-free, tax-free rather, and I know he's a decent bloke who actually spends loads of money on charities, etc. in Brazil, so I'm not accusing him of being... If you offer 10 million quid a year for 2 years tax-free, I think you'd probably take it, particularly when you get to a certain point where he knows he's going to be in the Brazil squad anyhow, and he's probably ahead of Gabriel Jesus, who's never fit. So there's every chance he's going to be the starting number 9, whether he goes or not.
Yep.
Because it's only it's not as if he's going to lose 2 years of his career before the World Cup. He actually gets 6 months of being able to keep himself under a bit of... and a bit of control and not overplay and not be shattered by the time he gets to the US. So actually, in those circumstances, it might be better for him to go there, to get himself ready, and then he obviously score the winning goal against England in the quarter-final. I mean, that's just nailed on, isn't it?
I mean, also it's crazy, Jason, that point there. You know, someone raised here, like Matt, regular viewing this, and Matt, thanks so much. Matt says here that Solanke and Kalamawani, they both really had no real history of injuries before joining Tottenham, come to the club, and just been very, very unlucky with the injuries, right? I mean, it's just a curse of Tottenham, Jace. What can you say?
A little bit of that for sure. Although I think there are suggestions that Solanke didn't do much training early in the weeks at Bournemouth and things like that, and it was kept pretty much under wraps, some of his problems at Bournemouth, and that there was a problem there anyway, but not to the degree that we've seen at Tottenham. Muani, I mean, you know, the dead leg was frustrating, and you get broken jaw. I mean, it's not easy. I mean, Marty's right. You got. I think they've got 8 weeks to convince between one of those 2 or both of them. 16th of November to the middle of January, because obviously the window's open till the end. Where if one of them can score 6 or 7 goals between now and that middle of January period, and the other one's fit and has scored 3 or 4, then you might think, right, there's an opportunity to get to the end of the season. Because don't forget that the one big problem you've got in January is top players aren't really looking to move from big clubs. They certainly don't want to have a move 6 months or 5 months before a World Cup, and then possibly end up being on the bench and things like that. So that will play on their minds. And the really big clubs aren't looking to move top players down. The only way they're going to get rid of people is if they're sitting there moaning in the background that they're not playing, and they think, look, we'll get rid of you for the second half of the season. And that's the problem that you might end up with a Richie if players come in, or Muani or Solanke gets fit. We know Richie isn't the best with, to put it mildly, with mental health and things like that. He struggled a little bit of that, and if he's suddenly sitting on the bench every week, then that's not going to put him in a great place, and then you're not necessarily great around the training ground and things like that as well. So, how much quality can you get in January? Can you really go out and think this is a striker we're going to have for 5 years and here's 80-90 million in January? I think that's really hard to do. So 6 to 8 weeks, you've got to get at least one of Muani or Solanke up and firing and scoring 6 or 7 goals between then, and then you might look at it in an entirely different way if one of them's been able to do that, rather than having to panic buy in January and thinking he might come in and do a job for the rest of the season. But when you're spending 60, 70, 80 millions, you want them to be your striker for the next 2-3 seasons going on. And if you're thinking about going and buying Kane back, then that's another reason you don't go and spend another 60, 70 million in January if people are serious about wanting to go and spend money on him as well.
Yeah, just on that point about Kane, Martin, to bring you in, he's still in the form of his life, isn't he? He looks like he's absolutely loving life out in Bayern Munich. I mean, it just feels now really... Can you see Harry Kane wanting to come back to Spurs, given the form he's in for Bayern at the moment and the way he's playing for England? I mean, it just feels very unrealistic. Where are you on that, quickly?
What happens if Kane wins the Champions League with Bayern Munich, wins the World Cup with England? I mean, I know, they're not going to happen, but what if he does? Then suddenly coming back and beating Shearer's record becomes the prime target. And I still think he wants to get that 50, 60 goals he needs to go above Shearer. I think that's really important to him, because he thinks if he sets that record, because he'll assume that Haaland's going to leave City and go to Barcelona or Real Madrid at some point in the next 3 years. So he won't be able to get up to that mark. He wants to set that because he thinks it'll be a record that will never be broken, and he wants that. So therefore, where's he going to come back? He can't go back to City because Haaland's there. He can't go to Arsenal. I don't think he'd go to Chelsea. He won't go to Liverpool because of the way they've taken the mickey out of him as a club over the last few years, and the fans, and he remembers that. It's why I don't think he'll ever play with Harvey Elliott, shall we say, the same sort of thing. So there aren't too many options then, are there? And also, were he to come back to Spurs, he is the ultimate hero, isn't he? It's boys' own stuff. And if he were to win something and score the goals, it would mean more to him. And also, the biggest impediment, which you would think, to him returning, is no longer the chairman of the club.
Yeah. I want to close with Martin, but just very quick before I close that question with Martin. Jace, many are asking about Troy Parrott's had the week of his life. 5 goals in 3 days. He's taking Ireland now towards a qualifier, which, really at one point didn't even look like it was going to be a possibility. What a week he's had. And again, a reminder in football that really unexpected, because I think Troy at the time of being at Spurs, there was real genuine hope he was going to be the next big star. I think obviously he was at the club, I think even during Robbie's time there. What a week he's had, Jace, Troy Parrott. But you're never to know, right, in terms of the way football moves with regards to Troy.
No, he's done well in Holland with RZ, and what an amazing week. I mean, to beat Portugal with all the drama that went on there with Ronaldo being sent off, but he got a hero's reception. I think he said it was the best night of his life when they got both against Portugal, and he's gone even further today with a hat-trick, including, what was it, literally the last kick of the game.
The last kick.
Yeah, literally the last kick of the game, away to Hungary, to go above Hungary and that. I mean, just shows you there are some fantastic stories around, isn't there, about players. And, he was, there were lots of people calling for him at the time because we were in the middle, I think, then of big injuries, weren't we? But Mourinho said all the time that Scarlett was the one that he thought was the better, the most likely one to come through. So, and even Romero name-checked Scarlett on that fans forum night.
He did.
So, it just shows you need the opportunity to come, and who knows, mate. But no, nice to see a little bit of success for him this week, and just an amazing couple of days for the Irish, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Martin, to close with you, we're going to probably grab you back for January. We always love having you on during a January transfer window. It's always a frenzy with Spurs in the transfer window. But where we are right now, this stage in the season, like we say, Spurs currently in the top 5, unbeaten in the Champions League. They've got the FA Cup to come. What is success for Thomas Frank Martin in this first season at the club, in your opinion?
Minimum of success will be getting into a European spot. So that's top 7. I think the target's got to be top 5. I don't think that's going to be easy, but I think it's that they've got to be looking to do that. And you'd like a run of some sort in, now the League Cup's gone, in the FA Cup. But yeah, I think what more importantly, actually, it's that we get to the end of the season genuinely positive about next season, starting to believe that we're seeing a club and a team that's evolving, a manager whose messages have got across, a sense of a direction, rather than matches that are all over the place and no cohesion. So it's about being a club that's actually starting to look like a proper football club from top to bottom. And I think it's a big ask, but that doesn't mean he can't do it.
Agree. It's going to be an interesting week. North London Derby week. Again, these weeks, it does feel always for fans. It's one of the biggest weeks of the season. We'll be building up to it, of course, on here. Gut feeling. Let's go quickly. Can we have gut feelings for anyone? We've got no idea what the team will be. No idea who's fit. No idea how we'll line up. Both Martin and Jason are covering their faces. I don't think Martin's even seen us on this whole show, which is a masterstroke in itself. Jace, North London Derby, we're obviously still unbeaten away from home in terms of the Premier League. Obviously, beating at St James's Park in the Carabao Cup. What's the best we can hope for up there, Jace?
North v South London Derby, Rick. Don't forget. Never forget where they're from. They've not had a home game for 100 and odd years, for sure. In their temporary home, they still have. Let's hope we can go. I mean, part of defending the set pieces, and if you look at Arsenal, don't give away stupid corners and do things like that, and be very careful about how you move your legs at the Emirates, because they're very clever at not trying to go past you, but at playing the ball off your legs to win the corner. And I think that's where one or two people need to look at how Arsenal are doing it. It's not that people are making a last-ditch tackle that goes out for a corner. They're very clever at playing it off your legs, so body position and things like that. And that's why they win more corners than not, and that's where their big threat is from. So, it's just being a little bit like Stoke was years ago, when it was better to concede a corner than a throw on because of Rory Delap. You've just got to just adjust your body positions and make sure those opportunities to play off your legs and off your feet in the corners, when they're standing in a corner and your fullbacks goal side of them and they think, right, where am I going to go? Make sure you don't give away needless, stupid corners with things like that. And that's part of defending against them. But we've been able to we have defended set pieces better. It is their biggest threat, and if Gabriel's missing, you give yourself an opportunity. And let's see what type of team we've got, mate. But there's a long way to go before next Sunday, and so many things can happen this week. And let's see our own team news. But
yes.
And that's another area where we miss Solanke as well, because we saw how Kane would be, and Solanke last year on that near post to deal with that initial ball into the box, the one that comes in flat, handle that, because we know that Vic isn't great at commanding his box at corners, and we saw that with Man United. So we still need to be some help, but don't give away stupid ones, and that minimises the risks of them scoring from them.
Yeah. Martin, final message ahead of Arsenal?
Look,
rallying cry?
They are better than us. They have been for the last 3 years, in the same way that we were better than them for the previous 6 years. It goes in cycles. If you are offering me a point, I'm snapping your hand off. Let's be honest. I'm going to
Of course.
be true
Yeah.
about it. I'm
Yeah.
absolutely snapping your hand off. But as I said earlier on, I just want to see us actually try and hurt them.
Turn up. Yeah.
I want to. I don't mean hurt them physically.
Yeah,
I mean hurt them with the ball. I want to
course.
see us go out there and try and ask them questions that they don't want to answer, because no one wants to answer those questions, and we haven't done it enough there in particular. And it's time that we did. And even then, we're going to have to get a result. We're going to have some brilliant defending and some brilliant goalkeeping and a bit of luck, because they're a better team than us. And there's nothing wrong with admitting the truth. They've got more depth, they've got more players, they've got more quality. Doesn't mean they win. They've got more depth and more players and more quality than Sunderland. Sunderland drew 2-2. I know they were at home, but sometimes it's not just about that. It's about the ball is round. It's about the small margins, as managers always say. It's about having a bit of luck, having a bit of courage, having a bit of something, getting the decisions that the 60-40s that go your way, the 50-50s that go your way, all of that. If you have a chance, you've got to take it. If you have an advantage, you've got to take it. I just want us to go out there and actually, it's an easy thing to say, play for the shirt for a change.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And if they do that and have a right good go at it and get beat because they're a better team, hands up. Be disappointed, of course.
Yeah.
But no, the 3,000 fans who are allowed in, or 6,000, isn't it? It's 10%. For them to come away for the first time in far too long, thinking we had a right good go here. We had a right good go at that. And I think that's what I want to see.
I totally agree. We know Radu Dragashin is actually back in training with the Romanian national team as he ramps up final stage of his recovery from an ACL injury. So keep an eye on that. Martin, anything to plug? Anything exciting coming up apart from the January window coming our way?
I've just got my day job, as it were. Bits of rugby and then football, and then 6 weeks in New York in the summer. So that'll be fun. But no, I've no books on the moment because no publishers are interested in me. Fortunately, my proprietor is interested in me, and they stick me in the paper most days. So that's the important thing. And I hope someone occasionally reads it and watches this and engages with me on Twitter and such like things. And look, we all do this because we love it. I do this job because I absolutely love it. I'm very close to 60 now, and I wake up every morning thinking, what am I going to do today? And that isn't, oh God, what am I going to do today? It's what am I going to do today? So I'm very, very fortunate, and I've always known that. And my son, a huge Spurs fan, who knows far more about football than I do, and we spend all our time talking about Spurs, and it is the thing that gets us through, and it's brilliant. And when they win, it's brilliant, and when they lose, it's not so brilliant. But there's always another game, and we moan together, and that's part of football. And long may that continue, because it's only football, and it's brilliant, and I love it. But it is only football, and everybody out there. We've all got other things in our lives. We've got stuff that's really tough. Yeah. We've got things that go on, all of the issues and worries and that we all have. And football is a chance to take us out of that. And that's why you want to see them go to that game and try and play some football.
Agree.
Because it's an entertainment business. It's a change of from the normal reality of life. And you don't want it to be dull. You want it to be fun. Yeah. And that's all I want, just to watch my team. They're not going to win every week. It's Tottenham Hotspur. I want it to be fun. And I think over a period of time, under this manager, it will be fun. But it ain't a lot of fun now.
Let's hope the fun begins on Sunday at the Emirates. I want to say massive thank you. Jace, thank you so much. Jason's getting closer to Thailand, which is why he's smiling even more at the moment. Jace, thank you so much.
I'm getting closer, mate, to seeing the Aussie off stump cartwheeling out the ground from Jofra on at Perth. That's what I'm looking forward to.
I suppose where you're smiling because we've got the cricket coming and some of the darts and the snooker apparently is getting going as well. So it's all multi sports in Jason's house. Jason, thank you so much. Martin, thank you so much. Always a pleasure. We'll hopefully see Martin in January. Always loved on this show. Guys, it's Arsenal on the horizon. Don't be scared. We're going to be building up to it throughout the week. don't be worried. We've got more to come from Jason, from the wonderful Martin Lipton, the brilliant Martin Lipton. We've been the last one on Spurs. Keep safe, keep well. And as always, come on, you Spurs.